Welcome, everyone, to Mythstorie, the podcast about myths and history. I am one of your hosts, Bryant, with my permanent guest, as you can read, Cammy. Hey, Cammy.
Hey, Bryant.
I almost forgot you put that down there from our adventures a couple weeks ago.
Well, you put host.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. So, everyone, welcome. This is Mythstorie, a show where every week we like to take fun legends, tales, and stories, and we give you a slice of that story, and then we talk about the background behind it, the history, if there is any, what have you. And we've had a really busy December. So we had like two conventions essentially, one that went or both went really well, I think, and you can hear and watch. Peter and we just had a very festive episode about Krampus and St. Nicholas that just went up that was the last episode essentially. So give that a listen. But to continue on with being festive and such, while also hitting our mythologies, today we're going to talk about Saturnalia, the old Roman holiday, which, like every blog that when I started Googling about it was like, if you think Christmas is Christmas, then check out Saturnalia. And I was like, okay, all right, I get it. But Cammy, how familiar were you with Saturnalia before we started looking into this?
I know a good bit about it because it's one of the holidays that was kind of the favorite to Rome. So when I was in classics, that's one of the things that we studied.
Yeah. That's right.
When we studied like holidays and stuff.
Right. Yeah. No, I was aware of it on a general sense, and it was, like I said, just kind of from what we looked up for now. And then it's funny just because I don't know if because I've been thinking about it and reading about it the last like couple weeks, but there's been like memes from people on Facebook that joke about how Christmas is this culmination of these like pagan holidays, essentially, from like Germanic tribes, from the Yule, and then of course Saturnalia. And Saturnalia's legacy is really interesting, and it's connected really well. But we'll talk about that soon. Cammy has a little story for us. Cammy, will you please regale us with your story?
Absolutely. So I used the Wikipedia entry on Saturnalia and Britannica.com Saturnalia. I was telling Bryant earlier, I did have some other sources that were more primary sources. They were all in Latin. And with the time crunch I was on, I wasn't able to like translate in time and that sort of thing. So this is from my head and also those two other sources. In the beginnings of Rome, feasting in the name of the god Saturn was celebrated at the end of the sowing season to thank him for the plentiful harvest. The farmers, tired from their long year of planting, could finally rejoice in their labors being halted. Every person, regardless of status, was relieved of their duties and allowed to participate in the merriment. When a tired hero, just arriving from his long journey through Spain, happened upon the festival, he was overtaken by the drunken revelry of every man, woman, and child he encountered. He saw a great many pigs being served by noblemen to their slaves, and women and men dressed in each other's clothes. The entire city seemed to have reversed their roles to honor this day. But the more he walked through this place, the more he gathered that for some, this festival was not a merry one. There were men dressed in gladiatorial garb who looked like they had been fighting in the games for at least a week straight. These men, though victorious thus far, did not seem joyful. The stranger approached one of the men and inquired of their state. They told a story of woe, where they might fight for 10 days, and each man who fell would be sacrificed to the god Saturn. They said the god requests a phota in exchange for a good year of harvest. While the loud gamblers and the music made it hard to hear the rest of the words the men spoke, the stranger knew the true meaning of the word phota, so he set out to find the leader of the city. He asked several children, busy with their dice game, where to find the king. They were excited to be asked for help and guided him to a man dressed in fine robes, and on his head it was covered with a freeman's cap. He held a long declaration he pretended to read from. He would point with a staff and declare some absurd rule that pertained only to them. Cluck, for today you are a chicken. Hold your nose whenever you speak. Take off your shoes and wear them on your hands. The ruler went on and on. He pointed at the stranger and said, Large man, pretend you are a baby. Our hero said, I will, but first you must do something for me. For I am a stranger here, and certainly the rules of this day allowed for strangers to be treated better than kings. The ruler agreed with the man and asked what he wanted. I am a great hero, Hercules, and I have just come from Spain. As you may know me, I have traveled this earth to make right of my wrongs through my labors, and my journeys have brought me here. I wish to hear your interpretation of the word phota. The king spoke. Phota means head. Yes, said Hercules, but does it not also mean light? The king seemed curious to where this was going. He cocked his head and raised a glass of wine and said, Go on. If phota means light, shouldn't we be giving the god of this festival the proper sacrifice, the light he so wants? You are the king. Tell your people to stop the barbaric practice of beheading men and light your candles to the god. The crowd cheered, not least the gladiators, and the king declared it. And so it was that Saturnalia was no longer celebrated by the darkness of death, but by the light of life.
Aw. That was so good. Cammy saying she can't recite Latin on demand, but then comes up with a great little story that goes over like,
in lieu of
all of that. Yeah, no, that was fantastic. And that's great. As always, I say this all the time. You did a great job of kind of wrapping up the history of this ancient festival in a nutshell, because it is an ancient sort of it has roots in being an ancient festival. You know, the Romans before Rome, what was 5th or 6th century BC is sort of when they believe Rome was founded by those two dudes and a wolf. And like sources like Livy, like later sources say that it began around that time. So the time that Rome really started becoming Rome was when this happened. But there's sort of evidence that it began even earlier. And there's a lot of writing, in fact, on it. So you have like Tacitus and other really like, which I'll kind of show. Cammy has some background like studying Rome and stuff. I don't. And so I don't really know these guys off the top of my head, but the historians and the chroniclers of the time would mention these people like Tacitus in the Annals, the famous things, and like on biographies of Caesars and things like that. They would mention this. And it was kind of interesting too, because in the Julian calendar, it goes from 17 to 23, which Cammy and I are starting to celebrate it right now. And when this episode goes up, it'll be the end of it, funny enough. But it kind of went through some changes because of how popular it was, and it really was a popular festival. And I can't help but think of like we talked about Yule last year, and when Peter and I talked about Santa and stuff, I was reminded of sort of the Norse, Germanic, Scandinavian influences on the holidays, the Germanic stuff, which specifically that's where we get like the trees and the decorating and stuff like that from, and also gifts. But this has a lot of that too. And in fact, it has another big component to it where, as you mentioned, there was an important switching. There was a lessening of the strict social norms. And you had, well, and a part of that, you would have things like slaves and servants wouldn't have to do that. And in fact, the roles were kind of switched. So like the servants would still like make a meal, but then the masters of the house would maybe serve it, and they'd be wearing the iconic clothing of slaves and things like that. In fact, there's a felt hat called a pileus, which kind of looks like a Santa hat almost. It was like triangular, like a cone, but it's felt hat, which was what a freed slave would have. So I guess to denote that they're not, I'm not really a slave. I'm just playing around for a week, but it's still really cool. And if you are familiar with Boxing Day, that's sort of a big part of Boxing Day too, in a way. And it seems, I thought there'd be a bigger connection. Like when I started getting into Saturnalia more and more, I thought there'd be a bigger connection between Boxing Day and Saturnalia. And there isn't. It's very famous in Europe, from Catalonia to Germany. even Romania. But Boxing Day, it refers to like a Christmas box dating from the 17th century. And it's probably more connected to like alms giving, ALM, alms givings, like giving to the poor and the needy and things like that. But it does have a huge influence. And there's, like I said, there's no direct connection, but just the spirit, the timing during the winter and giving people stuff. I think that's the connection, is that there may be a loose connection. So if you're someone who thought Boxing Day and Saturnalia were like glue, they're really not, but there's some rough stuff there. Obviously Rome has a huge influence across Europe, and it varies where you go. Boxing Day is one of those things where like everywhere kind of has their own little version in parts of Europe and Canada and things like that, remnants of the British Empire. So, but Saturnalia itself, it's really cool. Again, you know, the Romans had, it looks like it was old pagan worship for them, like native to the Roman religion, but it even kind of has ties to the Greek ideas. So Saturn and Kronos are kind of seen as similar. And Cronia was a celebration of the harvest, and it was kind of similar to Saturnalia. Again, I feel like, you know, just humanity during the winter, there's not so much you can do, and you kind of want to party every now and then. And so it just works out that way, that these two festivals worked around the same time. And just like how Hercules, or Heracles, so influential in Roman, was just as influential in Greek circles before they really intermingled as much as they did going into the late ADs and things like that. So I really enjoyed, I used Ancient EU, Britannica, and there was also this write-up on, it looks like a University of Chicago write-up. I'll include it in the links, but it did a really good job of also kind of talking about it. And it kind of reinstated like all the social norms flipped. Like gambling in public wasn't allowed. Getting drunk in public wasn't exactly allowed either. You had to wear, like, instead of wearing a toga, you could wear different colorful clothes in public. So
yeah, it was like the dinner clothes.
Yeah,
that you would only wear indoors, like when you were having dinner. Like
that's
a nice
interesting. Oh, okay. Yeah. And that's, so that all of those things were loose, and your servant could go and gamble away his savings in the streets in a colorful outfit, like really easily. What I love is so yeah, it used to be like a week long, but then I think it was Julius was like, all right, we can't, like, cause like everything would shut down, like every service would shut down, and he was like, we can't do that. And so he restricted it to like 3 days. But then one source says Claudius, but another one said someone else, but I don't see it. So Claudius apparently was like, no, let's do it again. Or Caligula, that's it. Someone else said Caligula. We're like, no, we're going a week long again. So
that makes sense if it was Caligula.
Right. That's what
that makes total sense.
Right. He's like, nope, we're doing it. So yeah, I really like that's kind of what it did. But yes, the idea is that the ancient Latins did use it as a human sacrifice, which was certainly common in many circles in the Mediterranean. And the story is that, I guess you could say, the euhemeristic explanation as to why it shifted from human to the lights was this Hercules story. They said, no, Hercules said, we don't need to chuck heads anymore. We can just do a festival where we have lights. And that's part of the week-long festival, is giving out things like candles, sweet treats based off of like figs and fruits, and little earth figurines like of clay and other like wood carvings and things like that. But candles were a big part of that. So, and again, yeah, it's the winter, the days are smaller. So it kind of makes sense that you'd want to have candles and things like that going around, and sweet treats, just to make the cold a little bit better.
There's even, if you like basically Google it, but there's even treats that you can make today that, you know, there's like recipes for them for Saturnalia treats. Like,
yeah, the jellied figs is like one thing, and it made me think of like mince pies in England.
Oh yeah, they did like tart type situations
right.
that are similar. Yeah.
Yeah, it made me think like it's these really similar, like there wasn't in the sources I read, there wasn't like a direct connection, but it just seems like it seems like it's this theme for cultures to do the same thing when it's like cold and wintry and stuff like that. And after a harvest too, you really go out there. But yeah, I really, it's nice to see it. It's funny. It's not as, I feel like the Yule stuff survived a little harder. And I guess because, Christianity like took over and would have replaced those festivals. And when they were trying to Christianize the people who like specifically celebrated Yule, they had to like bend it a little more and include their stuff. And it's obvious that Saturnalia kind of includes, gift giving and things like that. Those things kind of stuck around. But I just don't feel, I feel like you like in France, there's the Yule log. I mean, there's the Yule log in several countries, like just the pastry or actual, like you have an actual log. And I was surprised to see that specifically like Saturnalia, just it didn't stick through in its name. Like little remnants of it, like the gift giving and stuff, still are around. But unlike Yule, it's really kind of it's Christmas has completely shadowed over it. I guess what I'm trying to say is I think of like Christmas and like Yule as like right next to each other in a way, but Saturnalia is just completely washed over by Christmas.
You have to think about it this way. The Romans didn't have to convert themselves to Christmas because they're the ones spreading it at a certain point. The Christians, when they became Christianity, they did have to incorporate these pagan beliefs. But then after that, they're the ones spreading it. So they don't, I mean, it's their culture. They can be as lax as they want to with it. But when they're going into these other places to get them on their sides, they have to, incorporate whatever, like Saint Nick or whatever we're talking about. I mean, Saint Nick was Christian, I guess, but whatever we're talking about.
Yeah. Well, he was Christian during the Roman time, 300 AD. So they're definitely like, there were still like pagan senators, I'm sure, like secretly doing their thing. So it is kind of interesting. Like, yeah, that's a really good way to put it. For sure. One nice thing Britannica points out, and I'll quote them here. So they say the fact that Christmas was celebrated on the birthday of the unconquered sun, or Dia Solis Invicti Nati, gave the season a solar background in general, connected with the calends or calendar of January 1st, the Roman New Year, when houses were decorated with greenery and lights, and presents were given to children and the poor. So I guess that there's another thing there with the New Year, decorating, gifting. It all kind of goes together, and the article continues with how the gifts of candles became popular again, and that was a direct way to counter, let's not human sacrifice, let's give light, let's make light and give that, when you burn. And that are like when the Norse and Germanic and other pagan European pagan groups, when they sacrificed, and this is really common anywhere, obviously, but you burn something, like I remember like when you wanted to please Odin, you'd have your really nice horse after a great battle and you'd kill it and throw it in the fire for Odin. You had to.
Well, there's also a tradition, and I don't know how far this reaches in America, but my family used to do it. So it's called the Luminara, and it is set during this time of year. I'm not sure if it's before Christmas, after Christmas, the beginning of the new year. I really don't remember. But what you do is you light candles on your lawn, and you can go around, and like the whole neighborhood has like lit up lights like all over their lawn and stuff.
That's really cool. Yeah, I think there's all these connections. Like, your days are shorter, you need more light, it's cold, you don't want to work, like the harvest is done, like all these sort of things kind of connect, and just human nature sort of, it evolved in that way. One other thing too, that I forgot to mention earlier, is a big thing is like at the Temple of Saturn, there are these like bindings that are around I think it's his feet or his hands and his feet, and those are loosened. And it's to kind of signify like the liberation of the slaves and the servants being able to, go out there, of the Roman citizens in general being able to gamble and get drunk and have fun. And also I get kind of connected to the harvest and too as well. So there's this really cool iconography there that goes on and on that I really enjoyed kind of seeing too.
And
so,
Saturn can come on in and join the party too if he's not tied up.
I know, yeah, that's exactly it. So yeah, I think that's about it. So it's really cool to see, you know, like there's early references to it, but it keeps getting talked about well into like the Roman world. It was, I mean, it was a holiday. It was a natural holiday, which, by the way, that one of the sources was like, this was a holy day or holiday. And I was like, oh my God, look at that etymology.
Like
right there.
holly, like the
not no, but like how holy, like
oh,
holy day.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, holy day, but you say that enough, and holiday. So it's the holiday,
Gotcha.
holy day. There you go, kids. I think that about covers it, though. Cammy, thank you so much for your story. I hope everyone learned a little bit about Saturnalia today. And feel free to celebrate again, 17th to the 23rd. This will be up on the 23rd, the morning of the 23rd. So happy Wednesday to you. Cammy and I wish you a happy holiday as well, and Christmas, if that's your thing. If you need something special, you can come watch us. We're doing this right now. Like, we're looking at each other thanks to things like StreamYard. And Peter and I had a very festive episode. I wore a Santa hat for 45 minutes, and it was cold enough that I didn't sweat at all. But thanks so much for joining us. We've got one more before the new year, so I won't say Happy New Year yet. We will soon. Cammy, did I miss anything?
I think you got it.
All right, everyone. Well, we will see you next time.
Oh.